Hello, friends. It's the middle of the week, Wednesday, November 10th, 2025. We're at 761 days. In meetings in London this week, I've been talking to government leaders, religious leaders, leaders of nonprofit organizations that are doing development work. And overwhelmingly, the sense is that the situation in Gaza hasn't yet hit a turning point, that the current ceasefire, it's a bit on the surface where what's actually happening in Gaza. While we're so grateful that in large part bombs are not being dropped as much and the death tolls have decreased, the reality for those living in Gaza continues to be atrocious. And we've been doing these videos for 761 days, and we keep saying, when will there be a turning point where maybe we do these once or twice a week? But the reality is, on the ground, water still is difficult to find. I'll give you some statistics about the humanitarian situation. And so we're telling the stories of the news of the last 24 hours in Palestine and Israel and the broader Middle East to seek to give witness and to call attention to the urgent needs of the crisis there. In Gaza, one of the main things that's happened in the last 24 hours is an exchange of the dead. Literally, Hamas had said that they would hand over a body by 9 p.m. local time. They found the body in Gaza's Shujaiya neighborhood, and then Israel reported that they had received the body of Staff Sergeant Itay Chen. It was returned for burial to Israel. He's an Israeli American. He was killed and abducted by Hamas on October 7th of 2023. There are still 7 remaining bodies of hostages. I won't go through their names, but 7 bodies remain in Gaza. In large part, it's believed that those bodies are difficult to locate or find because of the amount of rubble. So there's an Egyptian force that's seeking to help to be able to get those bodies returned. For each Israeli body returned, the bodies of 15 Palestinian hostages are sent back to Gaza. 15 bodies were received from Israel. Today, the number of bodies that have been received now is 285. And meanwhile, people in Gaza continue to suffer. The IDF has said they killed 2 Palestinians in central Gaza, whom it classified as terrorists. The reports I read said that these individuals had crossed over into the yellow line, and it's important to acknowledge that anyone who crosses over the yellow line is viewed as an enemy combatant. I also read a report recently that indicates that the amount of humanitarian assistance that's currently being allowed into the Gaza Strip under the Trump ceasefire agreement is actually less than the amount of aid that was allowed into the Strip in January of this year. According to the UN World Food Program spokesperson, they said yesterday that aid agencies are racing against time to get food and other supplies into Gaza. We need everything to be moving fast because winter months are coming. The World Food Program said they're severely limited with their operations because only 2 crossings in Gaza are currently open. The Norwegian Refugee Council said that Israeli authorities have rejected 23 requests from 9 aid agencies to bring essential shelter materials since the ceasefire took effect on October 10th. Israeli Defense Minister Katz has said that Israel is focused on destroying tunnels and the infrastructure of tunnels, killing any Hamas militants that are found within IDF-controlled areas, and that the IDF is working in that regard without any limitation. And again, anyone that crosses into the yellow line is considered an enemy combatant. So when we read about the deaths and hear that they were a terrorist, sometimes that may be all that means, that they crossed the line under Israeli control in the Gaza Strip. In terms of ceasefire negotiations, the U.S. submitted a draft resolution to the UN Security Council in support of U.S. President Trump's peace plan. This includes the establishment of that international stabilization force in the Gaza Strip we've been talking about in the last couple of days. An Israeli settlers, multiple, used a drone to attack a Palestinian olive harvest. Harvesters were present. Israeli activists were also present alongside of them in the north of the West Bank. Iran must seriously improve cooperation with the UN inspectors to avoid increasing tensions in the West. So said the International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi. he said that the IAEA has carried out 12 inspections in Iran since June, but had not been given access to the most important nuclear facilities. Related to Lebanon, the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, wrote on X that he's called for negotiations, quote, to end the Israeli occupation in the south and its repercussions. Friends, he's not talking about the occupied Palestinian territories. He's talking about the Israeli occupation of the south of Lebanon. He said the call is unifying national Lebanese choice, but Israel has yet to clarify their position and they continue their aggressions. Israeli forces in the south of Lebanon conducted an airstrike that targeted a vehicle in the area of Tyre. This is according to Lebanese media. The IDF said that it was a member of Hezbollah. In the US, the Trump administration is considering a request from Saudi Arabia to buy as many as 48 F-35 fighter jets. This would be a potential multi-billion-dollar deal that is clear to key Pentagon hurdle ahead of the visit that's coming from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And I wanted to just spend a few minutes closing by talking about Zohran Mamdani. He won the New York mayor race yesterday. I was talking about that race. We didn't know the results last night. The 34-year-old is a democratic socialist. He's the first Muslim mayor in the largest U.S. city, New York City. Religious news services put out an article today about how Zohran Mamdani's historic win and about how he's also seeking to win over religious leaders in New York. He is a significant defender of Palestinian liberation, and that has alarmed many Jews that live in New York City. But some rabbis are enthusiastically embracing him. They're even campaigning for him as a mayoral candidate. So, for example, Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum, who's the emeritus spiritual leader of Congregation Beit Shimchat Torah in Manhattan, called for both Muslims and Jews to build a shared future in the city together. Mamdani has the support of younger progressives that also has come as a part of his willingness to speak out on Palestinian causes related to the West Bank and Gaza. Again, that's alarmed many Jewish leaders, both in and outside of New York. There was a group of 1,150 rabbis and cantors from across the U.S. who signed a letter opposing Mamdani and the political normalization of his anti-Zionism. I'd call your attention to an article that Jewish News published that was a special report about what Mamdani has actually said about Jews and about Israel. If you're interested, I would really encourage you to check it out. To summarize, he's a progressive politician advocating for social justice, anti-imperialism, and racial equity. Some of his positions are in alignment with CMEP, some are not. Zohran Mamdani has become one of the strongest pro-Palestinian voices in American state-level politics, and his advocacy centers on ending U.S. military aid to Israel and opposing unconditional U.S. support for Israeli actions in Gaza and the West Bank. He calls Israel an apartheid state, aligning his language with global human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. He is defending and demanding comprehensive ceasefires and accountability for civilian casualties in Gaza. He challenges the suppression of Palestinian solidarity within the U.S. political context, particularly criticizing the Democratic Party leadership for marginalizing pro-Palestinian voices. So he has consistently framed Palestinian liberation as a part of a broader anti-colonial, anti-oppression struggle, connecting it to issues like police violence, housing rights, and racial justice. Now, the Anti-Defamation League, the American group that supports Jewish interests and is very pro-Israel, has said that its mission is to stop the defamation against Jews. They announced an anti-Semitism tip line, citing New York's new administration as the catalyst or a catalyst for anti-Semitism. This Mamdani monitor will provide transparency around City Hall's decisions affecting Jewish New Yorkers, including education policy, budget priorities, and security measures, the statement read. And they were referring, of course, to Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Now, regardless of your political persuasion, whether you're Republican or Democrat, or maybe you live internationally, I really wanted to share with you some words that Zohran Mamdani shared last night in his acceptance speech. I'm not talking about his policies. I'm talking about what he's calling for, which is really very idealistic. And yet I found it quite inspiring. This is what he said. The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not the hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. And he goes on, I'm not reading the whole thing. He says, and there are others who see politics as too cruel for the flame of hope to still burn. New York, we have answered those fears. Tonight, we have spoken in a clear voice. Hope is alive. Hope is the decision that tens of thousands of New Yorkers make day after day, volunteer shift after volunteer shift. Despite attack ad after attack ad, more than 1 million of us stood in our churches and gymnasiums and community centers as we filled in the ledger of democracy. As we cast our ballots alone, we choose hope together. Hope over tyranny, hope over big money and small ideas, hope over despair. We won because New Yorkers allowed themselves to hope that the impossible could be made possible. And we won because we insisted that no longer would politics be something that is done to us. Now it is something that we do. Standing before you, I think of the words of Nehru, a moment comes, but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends, when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light. Here we believe in standing up for those we love, whether you're an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the Black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or anyone else with their back against the wall. Your struggle is ours too. He goes on and says, together we will usher in a generation of change. And if we embrace this new course rather than fleeing from it, we can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism with strength, the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is the dismantling of the very conditions that have allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we will stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up. I won't go on, but throughout his speech, and again, I'm really not speaking to the methodology of the political approach. I'm not a democratic socialist, but Mamdani describes himself as such, but he talks about hope, and he repeatedly said things that are things that we talk about as followers of Christ. Hope is alive, that hope is a decision, that we have to choose hope over tyranny, that we have to choose hope over despair, that the impossible is made possible. Hope is something that we do, it is not done to us. Certainly for those of us who follow Christ, the hope that we profess is the good news of the gospel, which is good news for the world, good news for the poor, good news for the people who are struggling, good news for the people of Gaza, good news for everyone. So may we be encouraged by that. Thank you for the indulgence of letting me share a bit more about the U.S. domestic political scene today. Tomorrow will be a weekly summary. May God continue to go before us in the name of Christ. Amen.